Right after my husband's funeral, I went to my sister's son's first birthday party. She stood up and said, "My son is your husband's child. As his inheritance, I'll be taking half of your $800,000 house." She even flashed his will at me. I just nodded and said, "Oh, I see," trying not to laugh because my husband, I thought I knew what rock bottom felt like. 3 months ago, I was a widow at 34. My world shattered after losing my incredible husband, Adam, to a sudden aneurysm. But then, weeks after his funeral, my own sister looked me dead in the eye at her son's first birthday party and declared, "My son is your husband's child. So, as inheritance, I'll take half of your $800,000 house." Can you even imagine? What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was why I was desperately trying to hold back a laugh right there, in front of everyone. If you've ever had family drama hit you like a freight train, seriously, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this wild ride played out. Adam and we met 12 years ago at a charity auction for children with cancer. I was volunteering, helping organize the silent auction items, when he outbid everyone for this watercolor painting of the Boston skyline at sunset. It was all vibrant oranges and purples bleeding into the harbor, and I'd been admiring it all night. After winning, he walked straight over to me, that beautiful smile making his blue eyes crinkle at the corners, and just handed it over. "I noticed you looking at this all night," he said. "I think it belongs with you." That was Adam. Thoughtful, observant, generous to a fault. I fell hard and fast. Our first date was the very next evening, and it felt like we'd known each other our whole lives. He was a corporate attorney, brilliant but so humble, the kind of man who remembered the names of the waitstaff and asked genuine questions about their lives. 8 months later, he proposed on the harbor, with the actual skyline mirroring the painting that brought us together. We bought our Victorian home in Beacon Hill shortly after our first anniversary. It was a stretch, $800,000, but Adam had just made partner, and I was building a solid reputation as an interior designer. The house needed work, but it had good bones, high ceilings, a small garden out back where I envisioned future children playing. Those children, they never came. Not for lack of trying. For years, we charted, planned, and hoped. Then came the doctors, the tests, the procedures. For grueling rounds of IVF that drained our savings. Yes, but more importantly, they drained our spirits. I still remember the last failed attempt, the quiet drive home from the clinic. Adam reached across the console to hold my hand, neither of us speaking because we both knew that was the end of that road. "We can still have a beautiful life," Adam said that night as we sat on our porch swing. "You and me, that's enough." And he meant it. We slowly rebuilt our dreams. We traveled. We poured ourselves into our careers. We renovated the house room by room until it was the showcase I'd always imagined. Adam supported my business when I decided to launch my own interior design firm. Our life was full, if different, than what we'd first planned. My younger sister, Cassandra, was always kind of in the periphery of our happiness. For years younger than me, 30 at the time, she'd always been the wild child of the family. While I was studying design and building a business, she was bouncing between jobs and relationships. Our parents constantly worried about her, which usually translated into them making excuses for her behavior and bailing her out of financial troubles repeatedly. Cassandra and we had a complicated relationship, even from childhood. She was undeniably beautiful, with this effortless charm that drew people to her, but there was always an undercurrent of competition from her side. If I achieved something, she needed to one-up me. When I started dating Adam, she suddenly became obsessed with dating law students. When we bought our house, she complained for months about her apartment, totally fishing for our parents to help her upgrade. It was exhausting, but Adam, being Adam, encouraged me to maintain the relationship. "She's your only sister," he'd remind me. "Family is important." 2 years ago, Cassandra started dating Tyler, a bartender. He was handsome in a rugged way, with tattoos covering his arms and a motorcycle that our parents absolutely disapproved of. Their relationship seemed volatile from the outside, full of dramatic breakups and passionate reconciliations. Then came the pregnancy announcement at Thanksgiving dinner the year before Adam died. It was unexpected, to say the least. While I'd been living into societal expectations of marriage and career, here she was, announcing her pregnancy with theatrical tears and declarations about the miracle of life. I felt that familiar sting of jealousy. After all our struggles, all our heartbreak, Cassandra had accidentally achieved what we had desperately wanted. But I pushed those feelings down. I was genuinely happy for her, and I was determined to be the best aunt possible. Lucas was born a healthy 8 pounds 4 ounces. I was at the hospital with flowers and a handmade blanket I'd spent months knitting. Cassandra seemed overwhelmed by motherhood from the start, often calling me in tears about Lucas's colic or her exhaustion. I stepped in as much as I could, sometimes watching Lucas overnight so she could just sleep. Adam was less involved with Lucas than I was. In retrospect, I thought it was because of our own infertility struggles, that it might be painful for him to bond with a baby that wasn't ours. He was always kind when Cassandra brought Lucas over, but he maintained a certain distance that I never questioned at the time. Then came that terrible Tuesday morning. Adam complained of a headache before leaving for work. I suggested he stay home, but he had an important client meeting. "Just a migraine," he insisted, kissing me goodbye. "I'll call you after the meeting." That call never came. Instead, I got one from the hospital. By the time I arrived, he was already gone. Brain aneurysm. They said nothing could have been done. He was 36 years old. The next days passed in a blur of arrangements and grief. Cassandra was strangely absent during most of it, sending text messages claiming Lucas was sick or she couldn't find a babysitter. When she did appear at the funeral, she stayed briefly, keeping to herself and leaving before the reception. I was too numb with grief to think much of it then. 1 week after we laid Adam to rest, Lucas's first birthday arrived. The last thing I wanted to do was attend a children's birthday party, but family obligations pulled at me. "Adam would want you to go," my mother insisted during one of her daily check-in calls. He always said family comes first. So I found myself driving to Cassandra's small rental house in a less desirable part of town, a wrapped gift on the passenger seat, and dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. I hadn't slept since Adam died, spending nights staring at his empty side of the bed, reaching for a warmth that was no longer there. I parked behind a line of cars and took several deep breaths before grabbing the gift and heading inside. No one should have to fake happiness so soon after losing their husband, I thought, but I plastered on a smile and knocked. Cassandra's friend, Jenna, opened it, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of me. "Oh, Bridget, you made it," she said, her voice oddly strained. She glanced over her shoulder before stepping aside. "Come in. Everyone's in the backyard." The small house was decorated with blue balloons and streamers. A banner reading, "Happy First Birthday, Lucas," stretched across the living room wall. I noticed a group of people I didn't recognize clustered in the kitchen, whispering. They fell silent as I passed, their eyes following me. In the backyard, more guests stood in small groups, plastic cups in hand. I spotted my parents sitting awkwardly at a picnic table, looking deeply uncomfortable. My father stood when he saw me, relief washing over his face. "Bridget," he said, embracing me, "we weren't sure you'd come." "Of course I came," I replied, setting the gift on the designated table. "Where's the birthday boy?" "With Cassandra," my mother said, not quite meeting my eyes. "They should be out soon for the cake." I mingled awkwardly, accepting condolences and deflecting questions about how I was holding up. Everyone seemed on edge, conversations stopping abruptly when I approached. I chalked it up to people not knowing how to act around a newly minted widow. After 30 uncomfortable minutes, Cassandra emerged from the house, carrying Lucas on her hip. She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen, her hair freshly highlighted. Lucas looked adorable in a little button-up shirt and bow tie, his chubby legs kicking with excitement at all the attention. Cassandra barely acknowledged me as she placed Lucas in his high chair. She seemed energized, almost giddy, moving around the yard with an unusual confidence. Then, she clinked a spoon against her cup, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Lucas's special day," she began, her voice carrying across the yard. "This past year has been full of surprises and challenges, as many of you know." The guests exchanged glances. My mother suddenly became very interested in her shoes. "I've been keeping a secret," Cassandra continued, placing a hand on Lucas's head. "One that I can no longer hide, especially after recent events." A chill ran down my spine. Something was very wrong. "Lucas is not Tyler's son," she announced, her eyes finding mine across the yard. "He is Adam's." The world seemed to stop. I heard gasps around me, felt my father stiffen beside me, but it was all background noise to the rushing in my ears. "Adam's son? Bridget's husband and I had a brief affair 2 years ago," Cassandra continued, her voice steady and rehearsed. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness for both of us. We never meant to hurt anyone, but these things happen." I stood frozen, utterly unable to process what I was hearing. My sister was claiming she'd slept with my husband, that her son, the nephew I'd lovingly cared for, was actually Adam's child. It was so absurd that I almost laughed out loud. But Cassandra wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Adam knew the truth about Lucas. Before he died, he updated his will. She held up the paper. He wanted his son to be provided for. "This will states that half of the house Adam and Bridget owned should go to Lucas as his biological child." Every eye in the yard turned to me. I could see the pity, the morbid curiosity, the discomfort. My parents looked stricken, my father half standing, as if unsure whether to intervene. And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. Not a happy smile, but the kind that comes when something is so outrageously false that it becomes almost comical. I pressed my lips together, trying to contain the inappropriate laughter bubbling up inside me. "Oh, I see," I said finally, my voice calm and even. I took a sip of water, buying time to push down the urge to laugh in my sister's face. "May I see this will, Cassandra?" Her confident expression faltered slightly. She clearly hadn't expected this reaction. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document. It was a typed page with what appeared to be Adam's signature at the bottom. I scanned it quickly, noting inconsistencies immediately. The formal language was all wrong, nothing like the legal documents I'd seen Adam bring home. And the signature, while similar to Adam's, it was clearly forged. The connecting stroke between the and D was wrong. The final flourish, too. Pronounced. I carefully folded the paper and handed it back to her. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I think I need to go now." "That's it?" Cassandra asked, confusion evident in her voice. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Not right now," I replied calmly, gathering my purse. "This is Lucas's day. We can discuss this privately later." I said goodbye to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call them soon. As I walked to my car, I could hear the murmurs behind me, the party atmosphere completely shattered. Once inside my car, safely out of view, I finally let out the laugh that had been threatening to escape. It started small, then grew until tears were streaming down my face. Not tears of joy, no. A strange, potent mix of grief, anger, and incredulous disbelief at my sister's sheer audacity. Because there was something Cassandra didn't know. Something Adam and I had never shared with anyone. Something that made her elaborate lie not just hurtful, but utterly, biologically impossible. The truth about Adam and Cassandra began 3 years ago, long before Lucas was even conceived. We'd invited my sister over for dinner to celebrate her new job at a marketing firm, her longest employment to date. Adam had prepared his famous lasagna, and we'd opened a good bottle of wine. It was a pleasant evening until I excused myself to take a work call from a client having a design emergency. The call took longer than expected. Nearly 20 minutes of talking a wealthy client through hanging artwork. When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had changed. Adam looked uncomfortable, and Cassandra was sitting much closer to him than when I'd left, her hand on his arm, laughing at something I hadn't heard. I thought nothing of it at the time. Cassandra had always been affectionate, and the wine had been flowing freely. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Adam seemed troubled. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, sitting on the edge of our bed. "And I don't want it to cause problems between you and your sister, but I also don't want to keep secrets from you." He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra had made a pass at him. Nothing dramatic, just inappropriate comments about how lucky I was to have him, followed by a suggestion that he deserved someone who could truly appreciate him. When he'd rebuffed her, she'd laughed it off as a joke, saying I was too sensitive if he thought she was serious. I was hurt, but not entirely surprised. Cassandra had always pushed boundaries. We decided to let it go as an isolated incident, something caused by wine and her usual competitive nature. But it wasn't isolated. Over the next few months, Cassandra found ways to touch Adam whenever I wasn't looking, sent text messages that walked the line between friendly and flirtatious, and once even showed up at his office uninvited, asking him to lunch. Each time, Adam gently but firmly maintained boundaries and told me immediately afterwards. After the office incident, we confronted my parents about Cassandra's behavior. It did not go well. They suggested Adam was misinterpreting friendly gestures, and that Cassandra just looked up to him as a brother. My mother even suggested, with good intentions but terrible judgment, that perhaps Adam was feeling flattered by the attention and exaggerating the situation. That night, Adam and I made a decision. We would create distance from Cassandra without causing a family rift. We declined invitations that included her, made sure we were never alone with her, and Adam blocked her number on his phone after she sent a particularly suggestive late-night message. Then came the medical issue that changed everything. Adam had been experiencing pain for weeks before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, an enlargement of veins within the scrotum, requiring surgery. The procedure went well, but there was a complication. The doctor recommended a vasectomy during the same surgery due to the extensive nature of the varicocele and the potential for recurrence. It was a difficult decision, especially given our past fertility struggles, but we agreed it was the right choice for Adam's health. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We kept this medical information private. Even our parents didn't know. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we had learned to protect our privacy around reproductive issues. The only people who knew were Adam, myself, and Adam's doctors. After the surgery, as Adam was recovering, he made a prediction that seemed... "And whose fault is that?" I asked. "You have been bailing her out of her poor decisions her entire life. Maybe if you had let her face consequences occasionally, she wouldn't have escalated to criminal behavior." My mother gasped. "That's hardly fair, Bridget. We've always treated you girls equally." Cassandra, surprisingly, shook her head. "No, Mom, you haven't. Bridget is right. You always made excuses for me. Always found ways to fix my mistakes. It didn't help me. It just made me think I could do whatever I wanted without consequences." My parents looked stunned at this admission. For perhaps the first time, Cassandra was taking responsibility rather than deflecting blame. "So, what happens now?" my father asked, looking between us. "Is Cassandra going to jail?" "No," I said. "I have decided not to press charges under certain conditions." I outlined the agreement Cassandra and I had reached with James's help. The trust fund for Lucas, the therapy and financial counseling requirements, and the stable employment condition. "That's very generous," my father said, looking relieved, especially after what she did. "It's more than generous," Cassandra agreed quietly. It's more than I deserve. While my mother said, brightening, "This is all working out for the best. Cassandra has apologized. Bridget is helping with Lucas. And we can put this ugly business behind us." "It's not that simple, Mom," I said firmly. "Trust has been broken here. The healing will take time if it happens at all. And there need to be boundaries going forward." "What kind of boundaries?" she asked, looking worried. "For one thing, I need you both to stop enabling Cassandra's behavior. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She needs to stand on her own feet with appropriate support that does not perpetuate dependency." My father nodded slowly. "That seems reasonable. And I need you to respect that my relationship with Cassandra will be different now. I'm involved in Lucas's life because I love him and want the best for him. But Cassandra and I will not be close the way we once were. At least not for a long time." My mother looked distressed. "But we are family. We need to stick together, especially now." "Being family doesn't mean tolerating abuse, Mom," I said gently. "What Cassandra did was abusive. She tried to use my grief to manipulate me, to take advantage of me at my most vulnerable. That has consequences, even within a family." The remainder of the dinner was subdued, with my parents processing this new reality. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too." My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad, already mourning the idealized family dynamic she had always pretended we had. Cassandra was the last to leave. At the door, she hesitated. "I really am sorry," she said again. "Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything. For the years of competition and jealousy, for not being the sister you deserved." "I know," I replied, "and I hope the therapy helps you understand why you made these choices. Lucas deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest. Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know," I answered truthfully, "but I'm willing to see where this new path takes us. For Lucas's sake, and maybe someday for ours, too." The drive home with my parents was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same. But perhaps in time, it could be something healthier, built on honesty rather than illusion. 1 year after Adam's death, I stood in our garden, watching the spring bulbs push through the soil. The daffodils Adam had planted the previous fall were blooming, a riot of yellow against the newly green lawn. I felt a bittersweet ache seeing them, knowing he had put them in the ground with hopes of seeing them bloom. So much had changed in that year. The trust fund for Lucas was established and already helping with his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition, while requiring monitoring, was responding well to treatment, and he was growing into a cheerful, curious toddler. Cassandra had surprised everyone by truly embracing the conditions of our agreement. 6 months of therapy had helped her recognize patterns of behavior stemming from childhood, the constant need to compete with me, the self-sabotage that had characterized many of her decisions. She had found steady employment as an office manager at a dental practice, a job that provided stability and benefits. Our relationship remained formal but cordial. I saw Lucas regularly, taking him for outings to the park or the children's museum. Cassandra and I didn't pretend to be close, but we had found a way to coexist peacefully for Lucas's sake. My parents had struggled initially with the new boundaries I had established. My mother especially found it difficult to accept that her daughters wouldn't have the close relationship she had always envisioned. But over time, they too had adjusted, learning to support Cassandra without enabling her dependency. As for me, the grief support group I had joined shortly after Adam's death had become a lifeline. 12 strangers, bound together by loss, had become friends, understanding each other in ways that even well-meaning family and friends could not. We met weekly, sharing our journeys through grief, celebrating small victories, and supporting each other through the inevitable setbacks. 3 months after the confrontation with Cassandra, I had established the Adam Preston Foundation for Legal Education, providing scholarships to students from underprivileged backgrounds interested in corporate law. It gave me purpose to see Adam's legacy continuing in the careers of young, idealistic lawyers who might otherwise never have had the opportunity to enter the profession. Old friends had stepped up in ways I could never have anticipated. Adam's law partners checked in regularly, inviting me to dinners and events, making sure I wasn't isolated in my grief. My college roommate, Sarah, flew in from Chicago monthly just to spend weekends with me, sometimes doing nothing more than watching movies and ordering takeout. And then there was Michael. I met him at a fundraiser for the foundation 6 months after Adam died. He was a professor of ethics at Boston University, thoughtful and kind, with a quiet sense of humor that reminded me of Adam in some ways. We started as friends, sharing coffee after foundation meetings, then gradually transitioned to occasional dinners. It was different than what I had with Adam, as it should be. Michael understood that Adam would always be part of my life, that loving again didn't mean replacing what came before. We were taking things slowly, both of us cautious but hopeful. Standing in the garden that spring morning, I reflected on everything Adam had taught me, not just during our years together, but even after he was gone. His foresight in preparing those documents had protected me when I was at my most vulnerable. His journal entries had validated my experiences with Cassandra when my own parents tried to dismiss them. His love continued to shield me, even in his absence. I had learned difficult lessons through this ordeal, that family relationships need clear boundaries to remain healthy. The documentation is not just a legal precaution, but sometimes an emotional necessity. That forgiveness does not have to mean forgetting or allowing harmful patterns to continue. That sometimes the people we expect to protect us are the ones we need protection from. But I had also learned about my own strength. I had faced Cassandra's betrayal, navigated the legal complexities, and made difficult decisions about how to move forward, all while processing the devastating loss of my husband. I had found a way to honor Adam's memory while beginning to build a new life for myself. The daffodils swayed in the spring breeze, resilient after the long winter. I thought about how grief is like that too. Not a straight line, but a series of seasons, each bringing its own challenges and unexpected beauties. I wasn't the same person I had been before Adam died, before Cassandra's betrayal. I was stronger in some ways, more cautious in others, but ultimately more authentic in how I approached relationships and boundaries. Sometimes the most painful betrayals force us to find strength we never knew we had, I said softly to the garden Adam had loved. You couldn't have known what would happen after you were gone, but somehow you prepared me to face it, and in that way, your love protects me still. As I turned to go back inside, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. Not because the grief was gone. It never would be completely, but because I had found a way to carry it alongside hope for the future. Adam had given me that gift, teaching me that love endures even when the person is gone, that preparation and honesty are acts of profound caring. If there's one thing I would share with anyone facing betrayal within their family, it is this: protect yourself with both documentation and boundaries. The people who truly love you will respect those boundaries, and the ones who don't were never safe for you to begin with. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with family, even when it hurt? Tell me your stories in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think. Thanks for watching and take care.